So it's another beautiful day on the Battle for Azeroth Beta, and today we're taking a look at the Vengeance Demon Hunter. So currently they're like an amped up version of the Legion Vengeance Demon Hunter, with a little bit more utility and a ton of self-sustain. So I'll be going over all the latest changes to our spells, talents, and give you my thoughts on the current gameplay. And a friendly reminder, this is beta, so it is subject to change, but Blizzard themselves has said they're only doing tuning right now, so the gameplay should be pretty set in stone. So starting off with our base toolkit, we have our bread and butter, Shear and Soul Cleave. So Shear now always gives us a lesser soul fragment instead of having a chance to spawn one. And I'm a huge fan of this, giving us a more reliable source of soul fragments is just so damn good. And let's move on to Soul Cleave. It has also been hit with the rework stick, so we actually use it now. Weird, huh? It costs 30 pain and you can no longer spend up to 60 pain to make it stronger, so 30 pain, that's it. So it now consumes up to 2 soul fragments, not any and all fragments that are up, a maximum of 2. Which is very, very good. Now we can manage our soul fragments instead of just eating them as soon as we reach 5. And if we use stuff as Spirit Bomb, which I will go over a bit later, this becomes even more important. So with these changes, it's again a proper spender and a source of reliable healing instead of being something you brushed away and went pew pew Spirit Bomb instead. Don't you worry though, Spirit Bomb is still very much here. And our Mastery and Demon Spike has been reworked-ish to be in line with the BFA active mitigation, namely armor. Demon Spike now increases our armor by X amount and gives us 20% parry for 6 seconds. And our Mastery increases the armor bonus from Demon Spikes by an additional X percentage off our agility. And this is just Blizzard's way of making item level a bit more impactful as a tank. If it has agility on it, it will be good, to put it simple at least. And on the subject of our mitigation, our self-sustain from Soul Fragment has been updated a bit as well. So our passive Shattered Souls now has a row that says, consuming a lesser soul fragment heals you for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, with a minimum of 1% of your maximum HP. And this is pretty damn significant. Not only do we heal a lot more, but it scales with our gear and difficulty in a more linear fashion. I mean, consuming 5 fragments that all heal for 8% of all damage taken during the last 5 seconds can be a shit ton of healing. Anyone who's tanked as a Blood DK knows this from how their Death Strike works. So I am really loving this change. Moving on, Consume Magic is no longer an interrupt, it's instead a purge on a 10-second cooldown, and you consume 1 beneficial magic effect from your target. And doing so grants you 20 pain. Not sure as to why we need more utility, but hey, I'm not gonna say no to a purge for Mythic Plus. And Disrupt has been added, which is our new interrupt. I mean, I guess it makes sense, Consume Magic sounds more like a purge than an interrupt. It's on a 15-second cooldown, interrupts and locks them from that school of magic for 3 seconds, and you get 30 pain for a successful interrupt. Bit of a range nerf, but otherwise it's mostly the same. And Sigil of Misery's Fear has been reduced to 20 seconds down from 30. Imprison is on a 45-second cooldown instead of 15. And our passive mitigation Demonic Wards has been nerfed to 10% damage reduction instead of 20%, but we get 80% armor increase instead of 75%. Not much to say about it, it's just Blizzard's way of tuning. Every tank has it and it goes up and down. And on top of this, we've lost Empowered Wards, so no magic damage reduction cooldown. Sadness. But we've been given a raid buff, or debuff I guess, Chaos Brand. Your fire damage brands the target, increasing magical damage taken by 5%. So either having a Havoc Demon Hunter or Vengeance is pretty much mandatory for progress rating. Lock in that spot, boys. And I think that pretty much covers the changes to our base toolkit. Loving all these changes, but let's take a look at our talents. So starting off with our 99 row, we have Abyssal Strike, Agonizing Flames, and Razor Spike. Abyssal Strike, Infernal Strike's range is increased by 10 yards and its cooldown is reduced by 8 seconds. Pretty much my go-to talent at pretty much any given moment. Increased range and reduced cooldown is just way too good to pass up on. And Agonizing Flames, Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and it deals 20% more damage. So this one is really good as well. The mobility part is so-and-so. Sure, movement speed is nice, but it's more the damage increase that's the big thing with this. And then there's Razor Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, you deal 15% more physical damage and your melee attacks snare your targets by 20% for 6 seconds. And I mean, I wasn't a fan of this in Legion, and I'm not a big fan of it now either. I used it once in Legion, was during Necrotic Week, and no one in my group had a slow or were too dumb to use a slow. So yeah, sure, if you need to kite, go for it. Personally, I go for Abyssal Strike all the time. Might change to Agonizing Flames if it turns out to do a lot more damage than Infernal Strike, but I doubt that will be the case. Moving on, 100 row, we have Feast of Souls, Fallout, and Burning Alive. So Feast of Souls, your soul cleave heals you for an additional X amount over 6 seconds. So it applies a hot on you, not much to say, you get a little bit more healing from your soul cleaves. And Fallout, Immolation Aura's initial burst has a chance to spawn a lesser soul fragment from enemies hit. So on AoE you'll get loads of soul fragments anytime you use Immolation Aura, and it works fairly well on single target as well. And Burning Alive, every 2 seconds your fiery brand deals X amount of damage and spreads to one nearby enemy. And it can only spread from the original fiery brand debuff, but any brand it spreads starts with its full duration, so on 8 seconds. So this one works good on cleave, like 3 or 4 targets, massive damage reduction for those kind of situations. So I mostly go for Fallout here, more soul fragments mean more self-sustain and more damage done. Feast of Souls seems a bit on the low side compared to the other talents, and Burning Alive lost a bit of its appeal now that Fiery Brand doesn't increase our fire damage done by like 60%. Moving on, 102, we have Flame Crash, Charred Flesh, and Fellblade. So, taking a look at Flame Crash, Infernal Strike creates a sigil of flame when you land. Awesome stuff, it's great for AoE, ties in well with Abyssal Strike that lower Infernal Strike's cooldown, and it's a great way to get that initial burst threat on AoE packs, or to have a higher uptime on the Sigil of Flame dot on single targets. It also ties in well with some other talents and Azeroth traits. And Charred Flesh, our old Legion trait, so Fiery Brand increases the fire damage your abilities deal to the target by 20%. So it's no 60%, but it's something. So for single target and cleave, this will work very well. Cleave if you've picked Burning Alive, otherwise not. And then we have Fellblade. On a 15-second cooldown, charge your target, deal some damage, and generate 30 pain. Shear and Fracture has a chance to reset the cooldown on Fellblade, so just a massive increase to our overall pain generation. So if you ever find yourself pain-starved and in need of some resources, this is the talent for you. I mean, it is pretty fun to play with, but we don't need the extra pain. Who needs more pain in their life anyways? Right now, I mostly go Flame Crash. It does insane damage in dungeons, and I don't really need the extra pain from Fellblade. At least, not as it is right now. It might change when tuning is done, but right now we've got plenty of pain. And the 104th row, Soul Rending, Feed the Demon, and Fracture. So let's take a look at Soul Rending. It passively increases your leech by 5%, so at all time, and you gain 25% leech while Metamorphosis is active. It's an alright talent, I guess. 5% passive leech is pretty nice, but the 25% during meta is pretty lackluster. Most cases meta is enough by itself. You don't need more defensives during it. Moving on, Feed the Demon. Consuming a soul fragment reduces the remaining cooldown on Demon Spike by 0.5 seconds. So nerfed in half from its Legion version, but still very strong. Having our active mitigation up more often is very good in high keys and for progression rating, but it's also very much on a case by case basis. Sometimes it will be awesome, other times it will be useless. And Fracture, my darling Fracture, it's been revamped. It now replaces shear, so it's no longer a spender to spam instead of soul cleave, but you generate 25 pain instead of 10, and you instantly get 2 lesser soul fragments instead of 1. It is on a charge system, and you can have a maximum of 2 charges on a baseline 4.5 second cooldown, which is reducible by haste. And I am loving this change. We still get to have the gameplay with using Fracture to generate a ton of soul frags, and it ties in so well with how our new soul cleave works. I mean, soul cleave is on a 30 pain cost, you generate 25 with this, you consume up to 2 soul fragments when you use soul cleave, and you generate 2 soul fragments with this. See where I'm going? So yeah, Fracture is pretty much my go-to talent in this row. It plays great, works great, and sure it's on a charge system, but that's not really noticeable. I can't recall ever waiting for it to come off cooldown, being like, ah damn, I got nothing to do, gotta wait for them fractures. Moving on, Sigil row 106. So we have concentrated sigils, quickened sigils, and sigil of mass grip, or chains. Concentrated sigils. Sigils are now targeted at your location, and the duration of their effects is increased by 2 seconds. So you lose the ability to place your sigils, but they last longer, and it removes 1 step in your rotation. Having to place your sigils. So I've used this talent a lot in Legion on single target fights or dungeons where the mass grip sigil isn't mandatory. It's a quality of life talent, and having our AoE silence last for 2 seconds longer is astronomical in certain dungeons. And then we have quickened sigils. All sigils activate 1 second faster, and their cooldown is reduced by 20%. So your 1 minute sigil gets down to 48 seconds and 30 second down to 24, so on and so forth. I haven't found a whole lot of use for this. I'm sure there's some parts where it's amazing, but the few second it knocks off on the cooldown isn't really gonna make it or break it. Half the time you're not gonna get more use out of it anyways. If it was like half the cooldown maybe, but then it'd be way too overpowered instead. And Sigil of Chains. 1.5 minute cooldown, place a sigil that activates after 2 seconds. All enemies affected by this sigil are pulled to its center and snared, reducing their movement speed by 70% for 6 seconds. Grips are magical, especially mass grips. Being able to center a whole pack makes a world of difference in dungeons. And with the range nerf to Blood DK's mass grip, bringing it in line with Sigil of Chains, it just makes Vengeance shine even more in Mythic Plus environments. So I'll be swapping between concentrated sigils and Sigil of Chains, depending on what content I am running. And the 108th row, Gluttony, Spirit Bomb, and Fell Devastation. So let's go over Gluttony. It's our old golden trait from Legion. Consuming a soul fragment has a chance to activate Metamorphosis for 5 seconds. So I'm a bit torn with this one. I loved it in Legion. Whenever it procced, it was awesome. It helped me out more times than I'd care to mention. The problem with it is that it's so RNG, which is not great for tanking. But it's even worse this time around. In Legion, you didn't need to sacrifice anything to get it. You just had it if you maxed out your weapon. So for better or worse, it was just there giving you some free metas. In BFA, however, it competes with Spirit Bomb and Fell Devastation, meaning that I will probably never ever use it. Bit Sad was a nice flavor to the whole Demon Hunter thingy, jumping in and out of meta at all times. So with that said, let's take a look at the new Spirit Bomb. It now costs 30 pain instead of costing nothing, and you consume up to 5 soul fragments. You then explode, afflicting nearby enemies with frailty for 20 seconds, and you deal X amount of fire damage per fragment consumed this way. And you heal for 10% of all your damage done to any target with frailty. So it still does a shit ton of damage, especially on AoE. But seeing how Soul Cleave is a much better spender now than it was in Legion, it changes our approach to it a bit. So what I've been doing most of the time is I stack up my pain and soul fragments until I have 5 soul fragments, use Spirit Bomb to consume those fragments, and any pain I have left goes into Soul Cleave. And like in Legion, if I need faster on-demand healing, I'll switch from Spirit Bomb to Soul Cleave, and then use Soul Cleave with both fragments and pain to get stronger heals out. And this is where the change to Soul Cleave comes in handy. In Legion, if you popped Soul Cleave, all of your fragments were consumed right away, and you had to build them up again to be able to Spirit Bomb. However, in BFA, that's not the case. So we're gonna do some crazy math here. And stay with me. If you're at 5 fragments and you use Soul Cleave, it will consume 2 fragments, leaving you with 3 fragments still bouncing around. Crazy math indeed. So what this means is that we can instantly Spirit Bomb after a Soul Cleave, or use 1 Fracture and we're up at 5 fragments again. So Spirit Bomb doesn't by any means replace Soul Cleave anymore, at least not with the current tuning. And I'm guessing Blizzard wants it to be this way. And it's a lot more fun this way. It just plays so much better in my opinion. And an honorable mention, Fell Devastation is still here. On a 1-minute cooldown, you channel a Fire Breath, or Fell Fire Breath, over 2 seconds, dealing a shit ton of damage to enemies in front of you, and it also heals you for an absurd amount. It was really good at the start of the alpha or beta. It currently falls a bit flat behind Spirit Bomb, but we'll see when the tuning is done. It is really fun though, jumping into a pack, mass gripping them into Fell Devastation and just decimate them. But yeah, you probably guessed it, I will be running Spirit Bomb. And let's take a look at the last hero. We have Last Resort, Void Reaver, and Soul Barrier. So let's take a look at Last Resort. Sustaining fatal damage instead transforms you into Metamorphosis form and returns you to 30% health. Our Sheet Death on steroids. Metamorphosis is still an insane defensive, so proccing this instead of dying is very good. It will always have value on high keys and progression. Moving on to our new talent, Void Reaver. Enemies struck by Soul Cleave deal 6% less damage to you for 12 seconds. So pretty much a flat 6% damage reduction, which is pretty damn nice seeing how we weave in Soul Cleaves all the time now. Even though 6% is a substantial amount, against Soul Barrier and Last Resort, I'm not too sure. And on that note, Soul Barrier. On a 30-second cooldown, you shield yourself for 12 seconds, absorbing X amount of damage. It consumes all soul fragments within 25 yards and adds X amount to that absorb per fragment. This one is pretty damn insane right now. The absorb you can get from this is just huge, and as long as it is up, any fragments you consume go straight into the shield, adding to its value. So if you start at say 20k and you absorb a few fragments during that shield, it will just add and add and add. So you can do some pretty ridiculous things with this one, and it is a great "aw shit" button. I'm leaning towards Soul Barrier here for the most part, at least. Void Reaver seems pretty good, damage reduction is always nice, but having an on-demand huge absorb on a short cooldown is just such a lifesaver in a lot of situations. Or to ease up on a boss ability or stuff like that. And Last Resort is still brokenly good for progression and for high mythic keys. Any Sheet Death mechanic for a tank is great, it just lets you progress any given fight a bit longer, and to some extent it can be used as a cooldown. And that's pretty much it for the talent section. I just want to mention one of our Azeroth traits in BFA, which I've played around a great deal with. And that is Cycle of Binding. So, afflicting an enemy with a sigil grants you X amount of agility for 6 seconds, and it reduces the cooldown of all your sigils by 4 seconds. And this is just so damn good, because it works with all your sigils, including the one you get when you Infernal Strike with the Flame Crash talent. And if you have multiple sigils on cooldown, it reduces the cooldown on all of those by 4 seconds. For high Mythic Plus keys, this will be awesome. Reducing your overall cooldown on Mass Grip and Silent Sigil by a substantial amount is just so good. So, the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Going into BFA, they're looking pretty damn strong. I love most of the changes they made to our base toolkit and our talents. I like how everything works now, and I like being able to use Soul Cleave again. And it feels pretty damn good getting more predictable and substantial healing from our soul fragments due to the heals X of your damage taken effect that they now have. But as I mentioned in my pick in a tank video, I am a bit biased. I love Vengeance. I love them in Legion, and this time around they just feel like a better version. They still have everything I loved about them in Legion, they've just improved it, having all that self-sustain combined with insane mobility, and to be fair, a crazy amount of utility in their toolkit is just so much fun. So if you're looking for a dungeon tank, I can definitely recommend the Demon Hunter, just from the sheer amount of fun they are to play. And that's pretty much it for this look at the Vengeance Demon Hunter on the Battle for Azeroth Beta. And if you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. I try to answer any and all questions as well as I can. And as always, if you like these kind of videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and ring that notification bell and switch it to all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.